Well, this is Umazing. Recently, I made my first anime related video, and it was really popular for the standards of my channel. You see, I was just expecting, like, at best, some 300 to 500 views, maybe one or two new subscribers, and going back into obscurity, but it was very well received for my standards. So I decided to make more anime content. And what a better way to start with the true anime content than with horse girls. Yeah, horse girls. I asked in the channel what was the type of content you wanted, and it was actually Uma Musume the one that won. So I was pleasantly surprised, and just surprised overall because I was not expecting it, period. But here we are. Now, obviously, I'm not the first person that makes this type of video. There have been a lot of other YouTubers that have gone into the bandwagon of Uma Musume, especially after the release internationally of the Uma Musume Pre-Derby game. And even if that wasn't enough, the Cinderella Grey anime definitely had a huge impact. Now, there's one thing that is usually lacking for most of those videos, and it's the fact that all of them just go into a summary of every single season, instead of going into a more in-depth analysis of every season individually. And because I don't want to be the channel that just has one video mocking one extremely big anime channel and then fades into obscurity, I want to actually do something cool. And in this case is talking specifically about the first season of Uma Musume. So I wanted to talk specifically about how the first season of Uma Musume is a really great setup for the remainder of the story, and how that affected in a good way the entirety of the franchise moving forward. Now, you probably will notice that I specifically mentioned being a great setup and not a great first season overall. And there's a reason for that, but we're gonna talk about that in a minute. So before we go into that, I just want to thank you all for the support, and if you want more content like this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It will help the channel to grow, and it will also help you to make me understand that you like this type of content. So without further ado, let's begin.
And this video is also sponsored by water, like the previous one. Drink water, guys.
Something that I genuinely do not like about the way that other content creators go into this type of content is the fact that most of the time it just feels like they are summarizing the story instead of giving their own unique opinions. It's like the equivalent of reading Wikipedia, but without the fun of finding some weird article in between. A lot of channels just decide to go into the route of let's just talk in the most monotone way possible to make content, and I do not like it. That's why for the most part this is gonna be a longer video, because I'm gonna express my own opinions in the matter with as little summarizing as possible. Of course, there's certain things that need to be mentioned, but I will try to avoid going into the details of just chapter 1 does this, chapter 3 does that, chapter 5, and so on and so forth. If you like that type of content, I mean, that is not my channel, and I will not do it, I hope. Unless the rent is due, in that case you should expect me to do anything to gain money. I need it. So, for my own sadness, the one thing that I cannot avoid talking about is the start of the story. The first season focuses specifically on Special Week and her path to finally become the greatest Uma Musume in all of Japan. But what is an Uma Musume exactly? Well, in summary, Uma Musumes are just horse girls, literally. They cannot be males whatsoever. They can only be females. Why? Because anime. And I think that is great. They can be born in exactly two ways. Either one, they can be the daughters of another Uma Musume, or two, they can just randomly be the child of a mother and father that are both human and somehow appear to be an Uma. So it's basically a genetical disorder, but instead of having something like alopecia and being bald, you are a superhuman, which is great. So basically the Uma Musumes completely replace the idea of horses. They literally do not exist. And instead we have these horse girls, which is the reason as to why they are Uma Musumes. Uma being horse and Musume being monster. Something like that. And in this specific anime, we see it as them being part of the only activity in which the humans still regularly use horses that is not cowboys, and that is horse racing.
Which is an insane premise, but I like it.
As you can already notice for the way that I mention it, this story starts in a very common way, being the stereotypical random person, or in this case, a horse, wanted to become the greatest at something, in this case, horse racing. Now, as someone that is at least a little bit lectured in a lot of different types of content creation, just having a boring or quote unquote repetitive story typing is not inherently bad. And in Uma Musume they know that because they use it to their advantage. Granted, it seems generic at first, but having such a weird way to go for it with the horse racing and all of that is very cool. Especially when you consider that every single main character is based in a real life horse that actually raced in Japan. Now, as someone that is doing a positive review, ironically enough, the first thing that I have to mention are the negatives. And there's a couple of them. The first complaint that I have is the animation. Now, the animation is not inherently bad, however, it is not good either. I would just call it a average to slightly above average animation for its time, which is the issue, the for its time. You see, this is an anime that originally came out in 2018, and for any anime fan, you know damn well that there was a huge before and after Demon Slayer came into play. An average animation from the 2020s is exponentially better than an average animation from the 2010s, and it feels in here. A lot of the races feel inconsistent. Sometimes they have great shots, but there's a lot of awkward ones in between. Something that is heavily removed in the rest of the seasons and the movies. As I'm telling you, it's not bad, but it's not good, and not being good for that era means that for most fans, I would tell you that this is not the best thing that you're gonna see, at least visually, the first season. The other major complaint that I have about this season is in Special Week. Special Week is a cool character, don't get it twisted. Is that type of charming character that doesn't have a lot of personality but is very difficult to hate because it's just a very cool girl. Do you notice the issue? See, the problem is that she is very soft and by far the weakest protagonist out of the entire series. The main group of characters consists of 7 different horse girls, and that is without even considering the potentially 8 co-protagonists, which would be the trainer. Every other girl in the story shows much more personality. What are you doing? As I already mentioned, every single girl is based in a real life horse, and that helps a lot to create their personalities. Golsen was one of the most polarizing horses in the history of Japanese horse racing, with highs that are as high as any other all-time great horse, but with lows that are so crazy that are difficult to even comprehend for somebody that doesn't understand something like horse racing. Daiwa Scarlet was one of the most anticipated sons in Japanese horse racing, being the descendant of an all-time great derailed by injuries like Agnes Tachyon. Vodka being actually the greatest mare or female horse in the history of horse racing, and all Silent Suzuka, Tokai Tejo, and Major McQueen being great horses that got their careers derailed in some way or another due to injuries. It's even stronger when you consider that half of these horses are in the Japanese Horse Racing Hall of Fame, and one of the other ones, being Goldship, should probably be in, considering that it has better results for career than its brother, Orfebre, that is in the Hall of Fame. And probably the only reason why it's not there yet is because of the 12 billion yen incident, which can only happen to something like Goldship. And yeah, every other character has either an explosive, very cheerful, or just interesting personality overall. The only one that kind of feels like it's in a weird in between is Special Week. Not being cheerful enough like other characters for it to be like a Luffy type protagonist, nor being developed enough to be like one of the fan favorites. It's like the vanilla ice cream of the characters. If you do not like it, you are weird. But you are also weird if it's your favorite. And you know that that is a problem with a protagonist. Because yeah, if your protagonist is like that, that usually means that you're in a ride for the stereotypical seasonal anime. Which this kinda feels to extent. Now that might sound like really harsh criticism, especially for something that is supposed to be a good video. And yeah, that might sound like that, but there's a reason for it, and that is because of what I mentioned in the thumbnail. This is a setup season. The first season is based on Special Week and all of her ups and downs until finally being able to become the best horse girl in all of Japan. However, that is not actually fully the main focus of the first season. Granted, that is what is happening in the races, but the most important part is outside of them. As I already mentioned, we have the main group of girls that consists of 7 different horse girls. However, that is not all what we have to see. There's a lot of other horse girls here. We have another team that is the biggest competition of Spica, the main group of girls. They are kinda antagonists, but in the same way that any 2 racers in real life are antagonists. They are not, but they can kinda be seen like it if we are looking at it through the lenses of a specific person, or in this case a horse. And that is where the first season actually shines, in its relations between the characters. Because for you to have a rivalry, you actually need a rival. And this show is really good at creating those rivalries. It's something that is expanded further in the following seasons, but in this one we already see it in a phenomenal way. The way in which Special Week starts her rivalries with multiple characters is very cool. Her rivalry with both Saiyan Sky and El Condor Pasa feel really natural. All of them being first year girls that are in the same classroom and all of them having dreams to follow. Wait, classroom? Yeah, because obviously has to be a classroom. Yeah, the entire of the story is based on an academy, which honestly doesn't add anything because the classes for the most part are basically useless. The only reason to why there is an academy, in my opinion, is to give an excuse to everyone to put all of the horse girls in the same place. Which, to be fair, that is a good enough excuse in my opinion. You don't need to have an extremely detailed reasoning to why you have to need to want to whatever all of these characters in the same place. It's just how it is, and I think that that is cool. But as I'm saying, the rivalries are what it shines here, and I think that they make a really good job and working with all of them. Granted, some of them are more important and interesting than others. The rivalry with Sensei feels more like a placeholder, and the rivalry with El Condor Pasa actually feels like the one that is more interesting of the two. There's also another rivalry right at the end of the show, which is like, why are you here? Why is France involved in Japan? And it's not World War II. But the rivalry and the relation that is the most important of the season is in reality one of 2 teammates, of Special Week and Silent Suzuka. Silent Suzuka, as we see early in the anime, is the first horse girl that she sees in real life, which makes her immediately her inspiration. It was also a time that a guy decided to sexually assault her, because yeah, Special Week was a country girl that went to the big city and saw something related with her passion and her hobby, and in the middle of it she was basically borderline groped. Which sounds very accurate for the average experience of a 15-year-old in Japan, so I think that that gives a lot of points in realism. Yeah, one of the interesting things that happened in this season is that the trainer, oh sorry, Toreina, is very open with its love of horses. And he actually treats them like real life horses, which, for somebody in real life, that would not sound as bad, but imagine that a 35-year-older goes and the first thing that does when it sees a girl, which only difference with regular girls is that it has bigger ears and a tail, is start touching its tykes because it wants to see the potential of how strong and how fast it can go. Yeah, in the practice doesn't look that good. However, that is something that we're gonna talk about later, and we are now gonna keep following the important part. The relation with Silent Suzuka is a very cute and cool one. It not only goes for the fact that they are friends, but they are constantly and actively reminding you that they are rivals, and they are bound to see each other. That is bound to happen, right? See, the thing is that at the start of the anime, we can safely assume that Silent Suzuka is the best racehorse in all of Japan, and probably by not a particularly close margin. She is easily the best one, and Special Weight has a lot to cut on to even be in the same race as her. Which is an important early detail. There are different types of races, not only in terms of length, which is also a thing, but also different divisions. If you are a horse in your first race, you're not gonna fight against the best. That is like having a second or third division team facing Real Madrid. You know that that is not gonna end good. Oh, hello Alcorcon, how are you? So before she can actually fight in a real race against Silent Suzuka, she needs to train a lot and win in a lot of races. Which is what we see for most of the season. We see her going in different types of races and a lot of different types of trainings in order for her to become an Uma Musume and being closer and closer to her rival. In the middle of all of this is where we find what I think is the best thing out of the entirety of the first season, which is the world building. You see, there's a reason to why I haven't specifically talked about the races, and it's because a lot of them are either very predictable or they are not that high stakes to begin with. And that is something kinda sad for something that is supposed to be a anime about horse racing, but it compensates with the way that it sets up the following seasons. And as I'm saying, the world building is just phenomenal. Every single detail feels like it was made with love. It's not just that they decided to put some random horse girls in a regular war and call it a day. No, they actually put a lot of thought process into it. There are several different things that are specifically made for Uma Musumes. Fonts that are longer because they have their ears on top of their head instead of their side. Like this. Ow. Having things such as trucks that instead of selling ice cream, they sell honey because the in real life horses really like honey. Having cycle lanes or bicycle lanes being replaced with Uma lanes that have their own speed limit that is higher because they are gonna make less damage than an actual car. Having raincoats with ergonomic designs to not have the Umas feel discomfort on their ears, even though I like more the word poncho. I think that I will call it the Uma ponchos instead. Poncho. And even in the title having the most iconic one, having a change in the kanji for horse, because in our world, the word horse is written with 4 legs. But in the Uma Musume world, because the horses have only 2 legs, the kanji is actually with only 2, which is phenomenal! The best part about all of this is that every single thing that I said follows the rule of the show don't tell. Not a single time is brought into consideration anything of what I just said. It's just shown to you, because that's how it should be. It's just more effective to put you into the perspective of this being a different world in which these girls live. It's fantastic, and I really appreciate it. Did I even mention that they have horseshoes? Yeah, they have it in their shoes! So yeah, the world building is great, but that doesn't mean that the anime has to be seen, right? But yeah, having a great world building can make this an effective set of season, not a good one. So why are you calling it like that? And if you don't think that everything what I have said would make it worth to watch, and you would instead go and skip it to go to the quote unquote better stuff, I would say two different things that I believe there are the reason to why you should watch this season first. The first one is undeniably the comedy. You see, in a world where you change horses with horse girls, not everything can be taken seriously. And they know perfectly that. And that's why they sprinkle the first season with phenomenal jokes. There are certain things that happen in the first season that make me laugh by just looking at them. A lot of different jokes just slap phenomenally every single time. And there are some recurring gags that are phenomenal. Like, my god, the hairstylist is absolutely hilarious every single time that she appears on screen, and I would fight with everyone that dares to say otherwise. Not only the gags are funny, but even the horse related jokes are phenomenal. Things like Special Week hitting herself with a hammer because she was distracted while putting her horseshoe in her shoe. The constant appearance of multiple different characters that are gonna be important in the following seasons, just doing random stuff in the background. And every single joke directly related with the real life horses, like how when they eat a lot their bellies just expand, and how Goldship is constantly getting hit in the eyes because the real life Goldship had an abnormally high level of eye injuries for no particular reason. It's just phenomenal, and it's something that also adds to the already mentioned world building. So it's doubling the effectiveness to make the people engage with the story. It makes it feel funny while being real, and that is phenomenal. Why I did this? It was this. Whatever. And the most important part is the way on how the characters feel the frustration and how they feel the sadness and anger of certain events. Because yeah, this anime gets really emotional. In the first season is not the best example. It's not as emotionally driven as the following seasons and spin-offs. But oh boy, it does have its moments in the first season. The way in which Special Week shows frustration the first time that she actually loses in a race, it feels genuine. The first time that she loses, she shows everything. She shows sadness and anger, and she starts screaming and feels frustration. Everything what you would expect a real life person living if they are failing for the first time in something that they feel that they are good. This is not just a race, it's part of her dream. Every single race that she wins is a step closer to fulfilling her dream. And that goes as well in the other way around. Every single race that she loses is a step further from that path, and she knows it. And the anime knows that, and they show it in full detail. The animation, as I already mentioned, is not great, especially for a quote-unquote sports anime. But when you stop thinking about the pure sport and you start thinking about the things behind that are more important than the sport itself, it starts hitting. And the animation, that prior to this point doesn't feel anything spectacular, actually helps, because it's in its simplicity that works phenomenally to show the true emotions. You don't need flash animation to show sadness in a character. You just need to know what you're doing, and they know what they're doing. And this showcase of emotion is something that is gonna be expanded and improved in the following seasons, because that's what sports is all about. It's about the frustration. You're not gonna win every single time. You have to fail in order for you to succeed once more. Even the greatest sports teams ever and greatest single athletes have lost several times, and they have to go through extremely rocky paths to finally get their glory. And some of them will just never have that glory. They're just never gonna live it. And that is something that we see in following seasons. And the last thing that we see is probably the most impactful, and is how devastating can an injury be for a character. Because this is a specific moment that I have to mention, I will have to put a spoiler warning, because this is a very important part of the anime for a good reason. So you just watch this part if you either already watched the show or if you don't care about spoilers. So if you're not part of any of these two groups, I'm gonna put a time skip in the top left corner. The only thing that you need to know, if you don't want to hear anything else, is that the way that they show injuries is way too real. So I'm gonna explain it. One of the most important aspects of the first season is the fact that Special Week is training extremely hard, not only to become the best horse in all of Japan, but also to try and fight with Silent Suzuka. Something that actually never happened in real life. You see, the Silent Suzuka versus Special Week is one of the greatest what ifs in the history of horse racing. Because in real life, both Special Week and Silent Suzuka were actually brothers that just never got to face each other. And they show the reason as to why that happened in the anime. In one of the very few times that we see a character not being Special Week being the main protagonist of a race, we see one of the races of Silent Suzuka, in which she goes and absolutely dominates everyone. She starts getting distance, and then she gets more, and then she gets more, and then she doesn't. In the middle of the race, she gets injured. For anyone that knows about horses, you know that injuries are a very serious thing with them. It's not just stopping your progress. It's not the fact that you are gonna lose track because you're gonna be months without training, which is something that happens also with humans. In a lot of cases, especially with horses, might mean that you will never race again. Never. Imagine how devastating it is to watch a young promising star of football, of basketball, of tennis, actually getting a strong injury in one key part of its body. A leg, an arm, something that is completely crucial to the sport that they are playing. Sometimes you just hope that they will ever come back to the level that they were, because they might never do it. The horses, however, are in a way tougher position than the humans, because at some points the horses have to be forced to retire way too soon, and in a lot of cases they can just not live anymore. Silent Suzuka in real life had to be euthanized because the injury was too severe, and it would have been very against the horse to just try to make it heal. The pain would have been too extreme for it, so they decided that the best thing was to put it to rest. The only two things that I knew about horse racing prior to watching Uma Musume was the fact that Uma Musume itself was based in real life horses, and that result of the Silent Suzuka race, her final one. And watching it animated was very gut-wrenching. It was a very tough moment in which you just never knew what was gonna happen. As I'm saying, in real life, Silent Suzuka dies, but we do not know what's gonna happen in the anime. We can just hope, we can just wait, we can just see. In a decision that changed history, the anime writers decided to just put her through a big injury instead of straight up killing her. That was a very logical decision, especially for an anime that up until that point was just another regular sports anime. However, they decided to show a lot about the injury and how it truly affects the character. Through multiple chapters, they show how much an injury can affect someone, even if it's not directly the person that was injured. All of her teammates are feeling awkward, Special Week the most. Even after she recovers from injury, she is still in a very poor state. She is still way slower, not slower than the other girls of the group, but straight up slower than the slowest characters that we have seen in the series. And that not only affects her directly, but also affects Special Week, who saw her as her rival. Now, with your rival being so weak, Special Week started to just fade. One of her biggest goals, which was facing Silent Suzuka, might never happen. Not because she could never reach her, but maybe because Silent Suzuka would never reach her true level again. An outcome that nobody would have expected in the first half of the show. After a couple of episodes, Silent Suzuka goes and heals, and actually turns into the horse that she used to be. just for a couple chapters before being completely banished of the show. But she managed to do it, and the things go back to normal. But we saw glimpses of what would happen in the following seasons and how truly terrible an injury can be for a horse. It is not the most emotional moment in Uma Musume, not even close, but it's the first truly emotional one. And that is something that is very important for you to understand what is coming next. For somebody that has just seen the posters, they would not expect anything more than just a fun horse show about horse girls doing cute stuff and racing. And that is not what this show is all about. And that is something that you cannot know if you don't see the first season. The first season has a lot of flaws, as we already stated. The animation can be awkward. The races in itself can be awkward at times. And the character, specifically Special Week, might not be the best. But this season sets off everything for the great things to come. It set the characters of Spica, the main theme of the story. It sets the tone of the type of story that it is telling, and little by little is increasing the stakes and making everything more serious every single chapter. Maybe this is not the best animated, the strongest, the toughest, nor the most interesting season to look at, but definitely is the season where you have to start. The season that is gonna give you all of the basics for what's coming next. The season that is gonna set the entire story, set the tone, and set the goals. The season that is the start of Uma Musume. If you want more content like this, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any suggestion to make to my videos, please comment down below. That will help me to know how to improve. And that would make, at the end of the day, better content for you all to enjoy. So, without anything else to explain, see you next time. Bye bye.